Okay, we're gonna do some feet and lower leg and ankle mobility. So to start with, you're gonna go onto your sit bones, and you're just gonna grab your foot. So our feet are in ski boots, running shoes, climbing shoes, work shoes, lots of shoes all the time. And getting mobility through them can be challenging. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna interlace your fingers into your toes. You're gonna just scrunch them up and you're just gonna hold them there. And now you've got a good lever on your foot. So you're gonna do some ankle circles, and as you're doing that, your fingers can give a little fascial release to the top of your feet. So I'm kind of grabbing my skin right here and I'm pushing it this way toward my ankle. And as I do that, I can also move the bones of my foot in that direction as well. So this is dorsiflexion, this way. This is plantar flexion. If you point your toes, that's plantar flexion. So feel what might be limited. Do some circles and relax. You might get some cramping. I just got some cramping. That's fine. It'll eventually go away. And then you're gonna just work up the leg. So we're gonna do just a little bit of self-massage and self-assessment to feel what is really tight. If dorsiflexion was limited, so bringing your toes toward your lower leg, then the muscles in the front of your shin are likely pretty tight. So what I'm doing here, so we've got our tibia, which is the muscle or the big bone that goes right here, and then the fibula is on the other side. So our ankle bone here, that's part of our fibula. The fibula comes all the way up. So it's kind of like an outrigger, if you think about like an outrigger canoe. So it helps stabilize. The tibia is the weight bearing. So just kind of thinking about having separation between the tibia and the fibula versus having just all one leg like we have above. We only have one bone up here, but we have two here. But often the lower leg is so stuck and immobile that it's almost as if we don't have two bones. So I'm just kind of rotating my hands like this in between and shifting side to side to try to get a little bit of separation in there. So our calf muscles, there's several layers of calf muscles. The gastrocnemius is the one that we see that has the two muscle bellies. Below that is the soleus, and it gets that name because it looks like the sole, like a fish, the fish sole. And those both go down and they attach into the heel and continue through the plantar fascia. So they go into the Achilles tendon. And then beneath those is the tibialis posterior, and it attaches to both the tibia and the fibula and what's called the interosseous membrane in between the two bones. So between the two bones there's connective tissue that wraps around, and so it connects into that in-between space. That one goes down and it actually comes into the inside of the tibia and then comes in and attaches to most of the bones in the foot. So it's what really helps support the arch. And as a little aside, if you find it hard to maintain an arch, you can actually work that muscle, and that muscle will help support and give you more of an arch. So you can think about picking things up with your toes, or even just picking up a towel or a dish rag or something like that to exercise that muscle. And in general, mobility improves when strength improves. So if you're finding that you have really tight calves and really tight feet, it could be that you need a little bit more mobility and strength in the lower leg. So then in addition to the tibialis posterior, there's the tibialis anterior, which is our main shin muscle. And it comes down here and it attaches here. So it makes makes part of a stirrup, basically. Attaches to the first metatarsal. And then on the lateral side are what are called the peroneal muscles, or the fibularis muscles. So fibialis brevis and longus. And they go along the side, they wrap under the malleolus, which is the bone here, and then attach to this sticky outy part and the fifth metatarsal. So those provide kind of the stirrup for the foot. And often the peroneus muscles are really tight, those lateral muscles. So just getting in there with your thumb can be really helpful to open that up. As you do that, I'm going to show you, hopefully this will help. As you do that, you can put it on a yoga block. And as you do that, you're going to bring this part of the outer part of your foot out toward, we're going away, like you're opening a door. So it's swinging out to the side, not rotating, not just waving. We're actually opening the door this way. That's called inversion or pronation. Pronation gets a bad rap, but we want to have the ability to move our foot in that way. The peroneus acts like a huge stabilizer for lateral force. So I've seen, at least with skiers and runners, they are super tight because the whole lateral side of the body gets really tight from the impact of absorbing lateral forces. So just work that with your thumb. And then you can also grab a ball and with your yoga block, put that under so that you have a little bit more leverage, because on the floor you just won't really get enough leverage to get in there. So put the ball right on the lateral side of your leg, and then do that same motion with your foot. So you're bringing the sole of the foot out. One way to think about it is if you have your feet together like this, opening a book would be one direction, and then if you were kind of like opening the book from the opposite side would be what we're after here. It's a little bit tricky to get that movement. And then another thing you can think about while you're doing these myofascial releases is trying to have precise movements with those muscles. So see if you can do this without also moving up above. So see if you can just isolate the movement to those smaller muscles. If you're not able to do that, just keep trying. It's a brain exercise. If you're using your quads, like sometimes if we shift to the calf, and if you try to bring, sometimes we'll have people bring their toes toward their nose. If you can't do that just with your feet and your lower leg, but you have to use your quad, then that gives you information of what's happening when you're running too. You might be using your quad for much more than what it's intended to do. So try to isolate the movement to the smaller muscles that are supposed to do that, so that the quads can do the big movements that they need to do. Okay, so now that I've rotated and I have the ball in the back of my calf, I'm just doing dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. So that's one way you can do it. You can think about bringing your heel more out, so extending through the heel. Sometimes that's easier to think about than bringing your toes toward your knee. And then because the gastrocnemius crosses the knee joint, you can also push your knee down, and that will also get the calf. So with all of this stuff, just find a spot that's interesting and try to just hang out there and take some breath. Okay, so let's switch sides. Get the back of the leg. You might find that one leg is totally different than the other. I'm not going to spend quite so much time on this side, but do whatever you need to do. Get the outer part. There's also a deeper calf muscle on this side that moves your toes. Excuse me. There's another one on the outer, that attaches to the fibula that moves your big toe. So we'll actually talk about that in a minute once we're standing and doing some other stuff. Okay, you get the idea. Okay, one more thing before we stand up is just working on the plantar fascia itself. So we have the plantar fascia, but then beneath that, there's also a lot of muscles, intrinsic muscles that just move the feet. So those feel really good to massage as well. Most of the muscle fiber directions goes this way. So if you go opposite of that, that can feel really good. If you have any plantar fasciitis symptoms, check with a PT about what you should do. I'm not a PT. As a massage therapist, I would say that if you have pain in the bottom of your foot, doing some cross fiber friction can help. But I do not diagnose anything. Okay, so make sure you get the other foot also mobilized. You can also just wiggle the toes, wiggle the forefoot. Also think about trying to get some movement in the back. These, there's lots of, the bones there can get pretty scrunched together and pretty hypomobile, meaning that they don't move very much, whereas the ones up here can move a lot and sometimes can be hypermobile. So in general, try to increase mobility in the hypomobile places and increase strength in the hypermobile places. So now we'll stand and put the ball in that spot. So right in front of the heel. If you have a pointy ball somewhere, this can be really good. It's also quite noticeable. So be careful, and you might not want to put your full weight onto it. So, but if it does feel okay, especially over on the lateral side, it can be pretty tight because that's where those peroneus tendons come through. So hang out there, and then you're going to stand. Once you kind of can feel even weight distribution, then start just dropping your knee forward And that helps get some myofascial release and gets those tendons. See how it's different if you kind of weight the outside of your foot versus the inside of your foot. Spread your toes. Always, always spread your toes. Play around with your heel. So sometimes our heels kind of kick in like this. So you can kind of readjust by going up onto the ball of your foot and shifting your heel back so that it's in line with the rest of your foot. So switch sides. See what's different side to side. Drive that knee forward if you can. Move a little bit forward and back. You can also kind of push your foot and kind of rotating it into the ground. See how that is. Try to just create a little bit of space in those little tarsal bones, excuse me. All right. So that's the end of the ball for now. So now you're gonna just practice some toe yoga. So this comes from a PT named Jay Dakari, who lives in Bend. He wrote the book Anatomy for Runners and Running Rewired. I highly recommend both of them. And he works specifically with runners to improve mobility and running mechanics, which I am very big on. So we need to have the ability to isolate what our big toes do. So I don't know if you can see this. So I'm bringing my toes, just my big toe, up off the ground, and then I'm putting down. And then I'm lifting everything but my big toe, and then I'm putting them down. Big toe up, push down, rest of the toes up, push down. Big toe up, push down. The other thing is to spread your toes. So see if you can create space between each toe. And for me, when I first started doing this, it was really hard to do. And so what I do is start with my pinky toe, and then I would just kind of smear the rest of my toes down. And then just over time, just keep telling your brain to do that, and it will eventually start doing it. You can also just lift your toe with your finger to help it along. If you haven't done this, your brain just doesn't know how to, just hasn't made those neural connections yet. So just help it along. If you can do it on one side but not the other, start by doing the side that you can do, because it will also help teach the other side to do it. So push one down, lift it up. So our ability to push through our big toe is really important for proper running mechanics. So this is a really great thing to try. And then anytime you're doing any kind of strength where you're balancing on one foot, or you're doing star touches or anything like that, make sure that you are going through your big toe. If you're always on to the outside, you're not having, you can see I'm kind of losing balance. If I'm pushing through the big toe, I'm super stable and I can do a lot more. Okay, so toe yoga. Try to lift your toes as much as you can. Spread the toes. So again, while we're here, just interlock your fingers and toes to get what that feels like. Feel what that's like all the way up. Okay, then if I finally, we're just gonna go down and sit on our heels. If this is too intense for the tops of your feet, you can put a pillow there. Actually, that might make it more intense. You can maybe lift here. I don't know if that's better. Just play around with different things. I have pretty flexible tops of my feet, so you're just gonna do this, and again, just go to your toes, try to spread those out. Sometimes it's easy to spread your toes in one position, but a lot harder with the other. You can also check to see what your heels are doing here. You can give a little bit of a myofascial release here. And then you're gonna curl your toes under. Also, again, make sure that your toes are pointed straight ahead. Gonna get into the right position and then drop down. And again, you can just give your heels a little bit of a hug with your hand. And you can also just feel what the quality of your calcaneus is. Like, is it easy to move? Is it really hard to move? If you move it, does it kind of go all the way up? When I move this, I can feel it, shift my tibia and my lower leg, whereas on my other side, it doesn't really do that. I broke this fibula, so who knows what that means. But all of this can be just good information. You can also just give yourself a little bit of a massage with your lower legs too. I like to kind of go out because most of the time it's already getting kind of scrunched in. So moving out feels good. Okay, and then finally, my favorite stretch that gets your hips all the way down, downward dog. I cannot touch my heels down, but just doing bicycle feels good. Try to, again, always just keep your hips and low back in line so you're not curving. So try to still keep, it's more important to keep that correct versus getting into here but then being curled in the back. All right, there is your foot and lower leg mobility.